We're going to be talking about WordPress 6.3 this evening. WordPress 6.3 is slated to release in just a couple of weeks. So now is a great time to kind of, get an overview of what this release is going to be about, do some testing on some demo sites, things like that. My name is Timothy Jacobs. I am one of the co-organizers of WordPress New York City. I'm also a software engineer at Stellar WP, where I work on iThemes. So I help develop the iTheme security plugin as well as a number of other things. At the end, after we take our little tour, we'll open it up for any questions. So if you have any questions about WordPress, security, WordPress 6.3, Gutenberg, we can try and answer them. But yeah, I'll also try and keep an eye on the chat as we go ahead, but no promises. Steve, one of our other organizers, Steve Bruner, isn't with us today, so I'm soloing managing the Zoom and doing the webinar. So forgive me if I miss any of your comments. Yeah, I can go ahead and grab that link for you, Mark. So what I'd like to talk about is the field guide. So this is a post that goes together every WordPress release that talks about all of the different blog posts about tons of things that have happened in WordPress 6.3. So we get a nice little overview. 345 track tickets have been resolved. Gutenberg had 1,700 pull requests, 307 of which were enhancements, 481 bug fixes. Wild. And so this WordPress 6.3 field guide post has an overview of a number of posts laying in some more details, things that if you're a little bit more of a technical WordPress user, you might find interesting. If you're not a developer, but you find this kind of stuff interesting, I'd still say it can be worth perusing, but it is a little bit more in the technical nature. So don't feel like you need to read through all of this before you click the update button. But if you're a developer, I would really encourage you to check it out. This one just got published just earlier today, I believe. Yeah, 7 hours ago. So it's fresh off the presses if you want to take a look. For those of us who aren't developers, I love to feature this page in every WordPress release. We don't see it very much anymore these days, but all the updates happen automatically. But if you go into the little WordPress menu in your WordPress admin bar and click on About WordPress, you'll see this page, and there's a new one for every single release. This one is still a work in progress. We don't have all of the fantastic imagery in here yet, but I think this text is pretty much up to date, and it gives you a nice overview from a user perspective of, hey, what's going on in WordPress 6.3? And these are some of the things that we're going to be diving into today. So I did want to touch on a couple of developer things before we dive into the main thing these days, which is Gutenberg, and we're just mainly going to be talking through a whole lot of Gutenberg different features. But there are some other notable changes that have happened. If you look through this field guide, you'll see a section on performance. So there, since maybe WordPress 6.0, 5.9, 6.1, something around there, maybe about a year or so, we've had a fantastic team, part of WordPress called the Performance Team, and they are taking the initiative to spearhead making WordPress faster. And they're doing an excellent job of it. And in this release, a couple of different big performance things have landed. There have been improvements to our cache APIs. User queries are now cached. So if you have tons of users on your WordPress site, it should be even faster than before. If you're using advanced terms and comments, or you're in a multi-site network, all of the metadata now gets lazy loaded, which is a kind of technical sounding thing, but basically means, hey, we don't need to access the data until we need it. And we do, we get it all in one go. So just make your site faster. Hopefully your WordPress site on 6.3 should be faster than it was on WordPress 6.2. A big update is we now have support for asynchronous and deferred scripts. So this is a way of loading scripts on your WordPress site, like JavaScript mainly, and can be things like ad tracking, but also things for making motion happen in your WordPress site. You can now load these scripts using async or deferred attributes, which is a huge performance win. If you're not a technical person, you don't need to worry about this. This is something that plugin developers and theme developers will probably be adopting over time. But if you build your own themes for clients, this might have been something that you've been doing in a very hacky way before, but now there is a full-fledged API part of WordPress. You just need to pass one attribute and it's all set for you. And so that can make your site feel faster. Normally when we load JavaScript, the browser waits until all of it is loaded before your site really can do anything. But now you can have say, hey, just wait on this one. Another big change that's kind of like in the performance area is rollbacks. So WordPress does updates, and when WordPress updates a really, really big plugin or really big theme, those mostly plugins, sometimes that updating process can go wrong. If we were only able to copy like 99% of the files, but we missed one critical one because there's so many to copy and maybe your site was like overloaded at the time, your site could end up crashing. So this might have been when you might have heard you reach out to a WordPress support for a plugin. They're like, hey, try deleting it and re-uploading it. And the reason that fixes the problem is because it makes sure that all those files get copied over. New in WordPress 6.3 is a rollback for when these updates fail. So this isn't about saying, hey, I updated to the latest version of WooCommerce. Actually, I don't want to anymore. I want to go try an older version. There are plugins that'll let you do that, or you can restore from a backup. But this will make sure that, hey, if you update to a new version of a plugin and your site starts to crash because like all the updates files didn't get copied or something got messed up in the process, WordPress will now roll back to the previous version for you. So a nice little win there. Another really huge thing is that WordPress has dropped support for WordPress for PHP 5.6, excuse me. So up until just a couple of weeks ago, WordPress is officially supported all the way back to PHP 5.6. We now, at a minimum, support PHP 7.0. So if somehow you are still on PHP 5.6, you're now going to have to update. Hopefully you're on PHP 8 these days. It's super fast. But if somehow you're still in PHP 5.6, talk to your host. They need to get you updated so you can stay on WordPress 6.3. But I'm guessing that doesn't apply to anyone here. I hope not. And lastly, the thing I want to touch on is development mode. So development mode is a cool feature for when you work on plugins or themes. So we have had things like WP debug, WP environment type for a long time. But there is a new constant called WP development mode, and you can set it to a plugin or a theme, which are probably the things that would be most of what you're working on. Maybe you're working on a theme for a client or a theme for yourself, and you want to set the development mode to a theme, and that'll make sure that things behave appropriately. WordPress, with all of its performance optimizations, does different things like caching and things like that. And when you're actively developing something, sometimes that caching can be frustrating. Why did I make this change? It's suddenly not appearing. Development mode is a way that you can hint to WordPress that says, hey, I'm working on a theme right now. Just turn off all these caches. It's okay. Or I'm working on a plugin right now, or I'm working on WordPress core right now. So a neat little constant for those of you who are doing some development work. Maybe you're working on sites locally, things like that. It's a handy new tool to check out. Now, the main thing we are going to be talking about today, as it has been for the past couple of years, it feels like now that we've been doing these what's new in WordPress talks, is Gutenberg. So this is another pretty big update in WordPress for Gutenberg. It covers Gutenberg versions 15.2 all the way to 16.1. And as we saw in that field guide post, like 1,800 changes, something like that, absolutely crazy. So we're going to go ahead and dive in, and we're going to start with the site editor. So full site editing has been kind of the rage, I guess you could say. It was stabilized in the last WordPress release, and it's now getting some more features attached to it, some more buttoning up, cleaning up, making the process feel a lot nicer. So when I jump into the site editor, you should see some pretty major changes, which was we have this whole new sidebar over here that's totally overhauled from what we had before. And it provides a lot of functionality that you used to have to kind of like navigate through different parts of the site editor and know where it is to kind of like figure it out. This is trying to bring all of it into one centralized place. And we're going to start, let's start maybe from the bottom up. You'll see there is this notice here that template parts have been changed into patterns. So I'm going to go over to this patterns tab. And this is pretty cool. This is a dedicated kind of area that brings through patterns that your theme has provided. So we can see this featured pattern, a posts pattern, a couple of footer options, and some other uncategorized patterns that are available as part of my theme here. We can also see the template parts. These are different header options. We get one footer with this one. and some general patterns. So I don't know why this one's saying no patterns are found, but there's a 2 over there. That's a little bit interesting. But we also have the ability to define our own patterns. And so a really cool feature that I think it might have launched with the block editor, I'm not sure actually, maybe it was 5.1, was this concept of reusable blocks. And so reusable blocks are a way that you can say, hey, maybe I have a section of content that I want to create once and put it on multiple places on my website. And I don't want to have to type it in every single time. I don't want to have to say, okay, we're going to, add this in here, add this text. So we've had reusable blocks for a long time, but reusable blocks are now called patterns, and specifically they're called synced patterns. And so if I want to create one, I can go over to this patterns page and I can hit plus and I can say create a pattern. And so maybe we want to say this is a pattern for an about me section. Oops. Now I get 2 options. I get an option where I can keep all of my patterns in sync, or I can keep them not in sync. So when you get a typical pattern that comes with your theme, when you insert it into your editor, if you make any changes to that pattern, it's not going to affect other places you've inserted that pattern on your site. But you can check this box to say keep all pattern instances in sync. And so this means anywhere I use this about me pattern, it will get updated and make sure that the same contents are all the time. So I want to say, hey, this is my bio. I don't want to have to update it on every single post anytime I make a change. So I can create a synced pattern. So I'll go ahead and hit create. And now I can drop in some blocks here. For instance, I could add an image block, grab something from the media library. Sure, we'll use that one. Maybe we'll put this into a group. We could add in a bit of heading here. Say about me. Maybe we'll put that ahead of it. And then we could add in some text. So we'll go ahead and do that. This is some text about me. And so now that I've done that, I have created this pattern that I can use throughout my site. And so, Michelle, blocks are kind of what compose a pattern. So a pattern is basically a collection of different blocks. So we can see this one pattern is made up of this heading block, this kind of image block, and then this paragraph block. But now if I go ahead into my site, and we'll go ahead, maybe we'll create a blog post, or maybe let's create a new page. And maybe we can make this a part of the about page. And when we go into this ad section, we'll see these are patterns that are coming from WordPress.org. This is, I guess, a little bit confusing, but these are our synced patterns. So this about me pattern that I have here, I can just go ahead and drop it in. And so instead of needing to add all these blocks separately, I just needed to add it once. And so when I go ahead and hit update, if I view this page in my site, we can see this pattern. And now if I go back to our pattern editor, I got a new job. We'll see that it's been automatically updated everywhere I'm using that pattern on my site. So this is reusable blocks, is what we referred to them before, but now they're synced patterns. But we can also add unsynced patterns. So for instance, if we just want to have maybe different layout options, we can go ahead and do that by creating an unsynced pattern. So maybe we have like a 2-up image. So we can hit create. We can maybe add columns block. We'll make it a 50-50. We'll add an image here. And we'll add an image here. And maybe we'll select, I don't know, these 2 images to start with. And so now I have this 2-up image pattern. And now if I wanted to add this, for instance, to my about page, oops, excuse me, to my about page, I could go ahead and do that. This time it's not going to appear in synced patterns. It's going to appear over here under my patterns, and we'll have this 2-up image. And now I'm free to make any changes here. If I go ahead and maybe apply a duotone filter onto one of these images, it's not going to affect my pattern library. And if I make any changes to my pattern library over here, it's not going to affect any of my other patterns. So previously, these patterns were things that you would need to kind of, your theme would have to bundle, or sometimes plugins would provide them. But now you can go ahead and easily create your own. I think it's a really handy tool if you are building things for clients. can say, hey, here's some patterns that you can get started with. And WordPress now lets you do it all via the user interface. Another section in the sidebar here, we might be stuck in some kind of loop here. That's pretty interesting. Okay. Let's go back into the site editor. I'm testing on WordPress 6.3 release candidate 1. This isn't the final version. This is a great time to test. If you find bugs, you can report them now, and maybe they'll be able to get solved before WordPress 6.3 gets released to the world. So yeah, this is an RC version. We may run into bugs. Usual disclaimer, it's beta software. So that was our pattern sections. We also have the template section. So we had this before, but it's kind of been revamped a little bit to have a nicer experience. Something that I think is really interesting is that they've brought in over different settings that are kind of relevant depending on what page you're editing. So right now I'm editing my homepage template. And it's brought over these different settings here. So it said, hey, the post per page, this is a setting that exists in the regular WP admin, but it's now been brought over. Maybe I want to change to only having 3 posts per page by default. I can go ahead and click review this change. It's going to show me the changes that I've made, and I can hit save. Now you can see my site's been updated to only show, it's showing more than 3. Might be another bug. There's also different settings here. So this is a really popular one. Hey, do we want to let people leave comments? We can have that checked or unchecked, things like that. Of course, when we want to actually start making changes to this pattern, we can just go ahead and click into the site canvas area. And we're now in the familiar full site editor. So if maybe we wanted to make some changes to our text here, maybe can we like underline this one or something like that, maybe make it italic. We can go ahead and get back into the editing interface through there. Another really convenient feature is what happens when we create new templates. So I'm going to go ahead and create add new template. WordPress is going to prompt me and say, hey, what kind of template are you looking to apply the content to? Is this a template for your front page? Is this a template for certain pages? Is this a template for archives? Things like that. So I could say, hey, this is the template that should be used for any particular post. And a really another helpful bit that WordPress now does is it launches this modal with different starting points. So previously, if you created this new pattern, you would get to a completely empty page. You'd have to say, okay, well, I've got this empty pattern here. What do I do next? Now this process has been made a lot nicer for you. So you can choose an existing pattern that ships with your theme and then make changes from here. So maybe let's say I want to take this title and move it above the image. I'm able to now do that without needing to know, okay, I need to insert these, like 15 different blocks to like make all my patterns work and things like that. This just provides you a nice starting point for working on a more advanced post. So yeah, as I'm making changes here, you can see that Gutenberg is keeping track of them. And it's telling me about them as we go under this review changes section. So we'll be able to see some more of that too. Another interesting feature is pages. So in early versions of the full site editor, you're actually able to just like seamlessly edit the content of your site at the same time you're editing the design of your site. And that was a little bit confusing. So it's brought out for the initial version of the full site editor that shipped. But thinking about your site and particularly the pages of your site that are kind of like more structural, it makes a lot of sense for you to be able to quickly and easily find the pages that you want to update while you're just kind of working on the design of your site. So Gutenberg introduced this pages section in the full site editor. And this includes, I believe, the 10 most recent pages that you've edited on your site. So we can see a couple of those here. So we could, for instance, navigate over to the About page. And you can see now the canvas has updated to the About page that we saw in our other tab over here. And if I want now, I can just go ahead and click in here and actually edit this page content. And so Gutenberg is giving me this notice saying, hey, it's now possible to edit page content. And if I want to customize other things, I can go ahead and switch what sidebar I'm using. But so now, for instance, if I wanted to move this About Me pattern up the page and maybe get rid of this image over here, I can go ahead and do that from the actual full site editor. And we'll see now, hey, we've got 2 changes pending review. So I think this is a really convenient place for kind of thinking through, hey, here's the main structural content of your site. You're not going to be editing blog posts through Gutenberg as full site editor, at least not yet. But this is a convenient way that you can get over to editing kind of the structural content of your site. And you can also go ahead and create new pages. It'll ask me for a title, and it'll create a new draft page for me. We're going to now navigate over to the style section. So this is really cool. This provides a way of navigating and seeing the different styles that ship with your theme. So themes now kind of almost have a built-in child theme mechanism, you could kind of think of it, where one theme has multiple different variations. And previously you would edit this through the actual editor, and that's still there. We'll see it in a second. But I can actually now preview this just by going through the style section in the sidebar without having need to navigate into the block editor. And that makes things like seeing how it behaves on different sizes a lot easier, different things like that. If I want to, though, I can still hop on into the style editor. I can open up the style book, which is this really convenient feature that lets me see how all the different blocks in WordPress look. And I can go ahead and still continue to browse the styles. But we're just bringing over more and more features that were kind of stuck in the editing experience, I guess you could say, into the kind of navigation experience, and making sure that that has a really tailored focus on like the design and the structure of your site without needing to be bogged down into the full editor details. So that's another convenient section there. And yeah, well, let's stick with Marigold for now, see how that behaves on our site. And yeah, there's convenient links here for getting to different versions. Another new change is that global styles now keep track of revisions. So we can see that I made a few unsaved changes a couple of seconds ago. But Gutenberg has been keeping track of all of the changes that I've been making on this site. And if I want to at any point in time, I can navigate back to a different version of my theme. So this is a really convenient way to feel safe and confident about making changes to your site and knowing that, hey, at any time, if you want to, you can go back into this revisions interface, see the history of things in your site, and easily jump back to them. And so yeah, you can grab that from this little clock icon that shows up here in the global styles sidebar, or again, from this new kind of section in the canvas sidebar browsing experience. I don't know what the best word for this mode is. The last thing that I want to touch on in this sidebar is navigation. So setting up navigation for your site is pretty important. We want to be able to say, hey, what was the content that we want to feature most prominently? How do you want to organize that? It's often the first thing that people see in your site. It's way up there at the top. And so Gutenberg now has an option of editing your navigation through this little sidebar menu that provides a more kind of like streamlined interface. So if I want to, for instance, move items around, I can go ahead and do that. I get little dots that will give me some more options that I can use. For instance, if I want to move this page down or move this page up, I can do that. If I want to show this page in the editor, I can click go to that page. I don't know why it's decided to do that. Very weird thing, but we'll go back. But I can go ahead and make some of those changes here. What's interesting is that you can't add new pages through this interface, at least not in any way that I was able to tell. What you'll do is you'll click this edit icon, which you'll see kind of up at the top right of a lot of these different sidebars. And when you go ahead and do that, it'll bring up the navigation editor as the full kind of like set of blocks that you're used to. So for instance, if I want to add in a new page, I can go ahead and do that and search for it. I don't know what page else that I have on the site here. We'll add contact multiple times. Why not? You can go ahead and do that and move those things around. So this is kind of still the space where you make most of your changes, but the sidebar gives you a place to make quick adjustments, I guess you could say. And I'm not sure where those... there we go. The block movers have gone. They kind of disappeared on me. But yeah, we can move this search thing over to the right. And I think we could maybe insert a block beside it. We wanted to maybe add some space. Oh, that's maybe being a little bit weird. Oh, it's Interesting. It's behaving in a vertical spacing scenario. I'm not sure why that is. I would expect this to be a row, but I guess not. We'll go ahead and get rid of that one. But yes, that's navigation. So you can see now we've accumulated a whole bunch of changes. And we can also see that in this review for changes section here. And so let's go ahead and save all of these changes that we have made. Okay, so see, we've had a couple of things come in. Suzanne, is there a way to convert an existing page to a template? I don't think we have a built-in way of doing that with just one click, but you can do it by copying the page content. So I'll come back to that one when we're finished and we can kind of like show how that would work, but there isn't just a single button that you could click. And from John, revisions, will there be a native way to delete past revisions to reduce bloat, or will we still need a plugin? So the revisions for global designs work with the built-in WordPress revision system that we've had for years. There isn't any UI option, as far as I know, that's been added to say, hey, keep track of this many. There is a constant that you can set in WordPress config that says, hey, this is how many revisions I want to keep, I believe. Yeah, as far as I know, nothing has changed on the UI side of that. There's no UI option that you'll do. So if you have a plugin that you're already using, you can go ahead and do that. Or I think some different hosting companies automatically get rid of revisions after a certain amount of time, things like that. So this is the same kind of revisions feature that we've had for regular posts and pages. A kind of fun fact is that all of those changes that you make in global styles and global designs, those actually save to a WordPress custom post type. So it's the same kind of functionality there. So if you have a plugin that is trimming revisions for certain post types, you should be able to use that just fine with global styles. But I will get to that question a little bit later. Okay, so let's continue on with some more site editor stuff. So this is, I think, a really cool feature. It's a little bit more of a power user tool, but it's the command palette. And so there are a couple of ways of getting into it. There is a little search magnifying glass icon up here. And when I do that, I open up the command palette, or I can press Command K on my keyboard. Whoops. Command K, there we go. Or Control K on your keyboard if you are a Windows user. And so this command palette gives you a way for doing some like more advanced, I guess you could say, or power user-esque things. Instead of navigating the user interface by hand, you can use the command palette to do a lot of things for you. So for instance, if I want to go over to the templates page, I can do that through the command palette. If I want to go over to CSS tools, I can type in CSS, and it's brought me up into the editor, navigated me to global styles sidebar, navigated me over to the CSS section, and now I can edit CSS from here. If I want to find different pages, I can. So I typed in the name of my about page, and when I do that, it's going to bring me over to the editor for my about page. And I can edit it through the site editor. I think you can even get some like creational things. Oh, did they take those out? We can edit template for this one. But let's see if we go back here, create. No, I don't think. Oh, here we go. It's under add. Yes. So if I want to add a new page very easily, I can go ahead and do that. Say, hey, let's add a new page here. And it's going to navigate me over to the post new interface for creating a new page on my site. So this is a very kind of like, it's both a power user feature and not a power user feature, I guess you could say. It provides a way for navigating to things without needing to know how to find them in the user interface. It's still a little bit, you can see when I open up this command palette, most of the time it's just giving me this type of command. It's a little bit hard to know what different options are available to me. But I think once you get used to it, it can be really efficient for navigating around the site. I wonder, is variations? Yeah, open style variations is going to grab me right there. Loading. So I think that's pretty cool. I don't know. The command palette, it's new, but this is an API that plugin developers, theme developers can adopt. So we're just now seeing this only in kind of like the site editor and a little bit of the post and page editors, but it's something that could come to all of WordPress over time. So I think it's a pretty cool step for providing some quick ways to navigate around WordPress using the keyboard without needing to know exactly what you need to click. But it's still early days, I guess you could say, for the command palette. Okay, so we talked about the sidebar, navigation, looking at my notes here, reusable blocks, the command palette, global styles, and we talked about creating new templates. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the new blocks that we have available to us in Gutenberg. So I'm going to go ahead and let's open up a new page, or maybe we can use one. Let's create a new page. So there is a new footnotes block. And so this footnotes block is pretty cool. It lets us automatically add footnote citations to our text. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe copy some lorem ipsum text here. So I'll copy some of this lorem ipsum text. And what I can do now is I can select some text, and using this inserter, I can add in a footnote. So let's say that I have a reference for, I don't know, I'm grabbing this, I suppose, from lipsum.com. So I can go ahead and add that. And maybe I have another reference here for some study. We'll say study in some publications somewhere, 2019. I was never good at English. So we get these footnotes that we're adding. You can see they show up as these little dots here. And Gutenberg is keeping track of all of them for me. So if I move this paragraph around, we can see that that footnote has automatically become footnote number 1. And this footnote has become footnote number 2. And you can see the order has been switched as well as in this manage footnotes section. So this is a really convenient way for managing footnotes. No longer do you have to manually do it, add in a subscript. Gutenberg kind of takes care of everything for you, which I think is really cool. This footnotes block will get inserted automatically if you add any footnotes to your post. And I believe it should add it again if you delete it. Let's double check. I'll add a footnote there. Yep, there we go. And it's brought them back for me. Back from the dead. But yeah, this footnotes feature I think is pretty exciting. It's quite a dynamic block, and it's cool to see that brought into Gutenberg. Another kind of new fancy block that we have here is the details block. So the details block is using an HTML element. If you didn't know, for the longest time, we used to have short codes, or even for a long time, just regular blocks that would have this kind of accordion things where you write a title and then you write some content. That's a great question, Suzanne. I don't know if you copy and paste text from Word, if they'll be converted. I wonder, we could probably check out copying some Wikipedia content and see if it does that as well. My guess would be that it could. WordPress has a fair number of different things in the block editor that copy over formatting from Word. But that's no guarantee. So yeah, it looks like it didn't parse the footnotes that I got from Wikipedia, but perhaps it does from Word. That'd be a great thing to test and see if it does. So this summary block lets us have a kind of accordion-like functionality. So we can say, here are some fun facts about birds. And we can add in some text here. I'm going to go ahead and steal some more content from Wikipedia. Birds are a group of warm-blooded vertebrates. Interesting. So I'll go ahead and add this to this hidden section. And so we can kind of see this if we open up list view. We have this details block. And then when we focus this details block, we have this text. And so we can add kind of whatever blocks that we wanted to here. If we wanted to add an image, we could go ahead and do that. Here's our fun bird. And these all become part of the details block. And so when I stop editing it, the details block will be closed. If I want to, there's an option here, open by default. And if that's clicked, then the content will automatically be expanded. And we can go ahead and see how that looks on the front end of our site. So we can see here, we have our post, we have this section, and we can open and close this to show this content. And of course, then if we make this closed by default, we can hide all of the extensive details and show them whenever someone is actually interested. There are some style tools as well that you can use if you'd like to. We could set, for instance, a border on this whole section, maybe add a different background color, something like that. We can make it very, very ugly, I'm sure. But we'll go ahead and get rid of that. So another cool thing is the spacer block. So the spacer block is a really kind of convenient tool. In some ways, this is like a reminiscent of, hey, spacer.gif from the early days of web design, where it's like, hey, want space between elements. The best thing to do here is I just insert an image called spacer and make that as big as I want. But even though it kind of sounds a little bit strange, I think this solution is a lot nicer than having to load an empty image. But it also provides a really intuitive way for creating space between content. One of the challenges, though, is that, hey, if I use the spacer block, I kind of want to establish some kind of rhythm and want to make sure that, hey, I don't have like 105 pixels of spacing here and 92 pixels of spacing here. It's a little bit confusing. So what we have now is different spacing presets. So your theme can kind of define different options here. This one for 2023 has 6 different options, but you could define more, you could define less, either than whatever labels you want. And this then provides a way for saying, hey, I want a certain amount of spacing, but I want it to be rhythmic, set by my theme. It can kind of be responsive. It's not responsive, actually, but fluid, so that it changes on mobile and in different viewports. But it provides a nice way of taking this kind of feature that is a little bit, and kind of make some of the web designers in this, I guess, cringe. But I think it is really helpful for people just saying, hey, I want to just move this down. I don't want to think about margin. I don't want to think about padding. But now we get a little bit more control of it. So we can say to our clients, hey, add 2 things of spacing whenever you're doing a new section or something like that. Not, hey, please try to remember to add 43 pixels exactly. That's never going to go anywhere. We also have some new tools to the image block, speaking of images. So we can go on, head over to this image, and we're going to see we have some retitlements of things. So what we used to be called the size is now called resolution. So this is the actual image source that gets loaded. But we have this new aspect ratio control here. So this image is obviously not in a kind of standard aspect ratio. But if we want to change it, we can change it with this. So we can say, hey, we want to make this a 4:3, a 4:1, a portrait, a classic portrait, so on and so forth. We can select all these different options that change how this image is portrayed without actually needing to crop it or rotate it or edit it. You can also apply this in your global theme. You're able to say, hey, I want to make maybe post featured images, always square, things like that. And that can be a little bit easier than, saying to your clients, hey, make sure to always open up a square image. And if you don't, it's going to look really weird. This is going to say, okay, we're going to make sure that it actually gets changed to a square image using CSS. So what is in the advanced section of the space? Let's take a look. My guess is that it is just the class name. Yeah. So under advanced, for a lot of blocks, you'll be able to always set a class that you can then target using custom CSS. And some of them in HTML anchor. This is actually kind of like a hidden feature, which is that HTML anchor shows up over here. So if I wanted to, let's say, add to, spacing between content, you'll see that the HTML anchor shows up in list view. And that can be a helpful tool for moving around the editor and saying, hey, we have 15 paragraphs, but which is the which? So, maybe this is second lead or something like that. And it provides a helpful way of indicating there. But yeah, that's just what's in the advanced section for most blocks, is a way to set CSS classes and a way to set the HTML anchor. And so this is how we can link directly, for instance, to a specific paragraph or link directly to the spacer. We have some more changes to some other blocks as well. So we have the cover block. So this cover block, it now uses layout controls. So previously, the cover block used a custom layout engine, Right now, it really just provides the same functionality as we had before, but this means in the future that it'll be easier for WordPress to add things like grid support or other advanced layout options to the cover block. So I'm going to go ahead and grab, let's say, this image here and add our text. So another thing is that the cover block now also supports text color as an option. So we can see here there is a color section for text. And when I set this option here, it's affecting the text that is inside it. Previously, I would have to go to this text and select a color. But now I can select an option, and all the text in this cover block by default is going to use that color that I've selected. So this can be handy for if you have large sections of text, you don't want to have to go through everything and update them, different things like that. And it also provides some helpful things also for like design tools and pre-built patterns, things like that. Another new option is we get border controls for the padding block. So previously we didn't have these, but if I want to add in a border, give it some pixels, changed on different sides, add a radius, all the different stuff that we have throughout Gutenberg for border controls are now available on the cover block as well. Similarly, that's been brought over to the buttons blocks. So if we insert in some buttons and add our text, we get the border options as well that we're kind of used to with Gutenberg. Previously, we just had like these different default and outline tools, but now we get all of the border controls of color, shape, size, dotted versus dashed, all of that kind of different stuff. That's kind of interesting look. Stay here too long, I'll get distracted. But yeah, just the continued proliferation of the design tools that we have in Gutenberg across all of our different blocks. One more thing that I wanted to touch on is the time to read block. So this is something that we can use in the site editor. So I'm going to go ahead and navigate over to a blog post. And so let's go to templates. And we'll say the single item post. We'll go ahead and edit this. And let's maybe make this look a little bit better, undo some of the changes that I made. We'll move this guy down. And we can insert in the new post to read block, or time to read block, excuse me. Oh. No, where did it go? Is it in post meta? Well, this might be the first true demo fail tonight. I could have sworn we had a time to read block, but I am missing it right now. Maybe the command palette would look it up. Let's see. Time to read time. But it's telling me that it is in fact not in this block, in this version. It's in Gutenberg, but did not get brought over to 6.3. It's slated for 6.4. Thank you, bud. Apparently it has some bugs with it, is what it sounds like. So that is good to know. It's probably just testing with Gutenberg installed. That is still a little bit confusing. It's that there's stuff that's in Gutenberg, and not everything that's in Gutenberg actually lands in the next WordPress core release. But at some point, we'll have this time to read calculation. You do kind of have this when you're navigating the editor in some instances. It'll show you like a time to read count and things like that. I think you might see it in some pages. Yeah, you can see here it's saying that, hey, my time to read is about a minute. But it looks like we don't have that actual block in this version of WordPress just yet. While we're in the site editor, there are some other kind of helpful changes that WordPress has been making to streamline the editing experience. So we can see here, I'm editing my template. And if I want to go ahead and edit this site logo, I can go ahead and do that directly from Gutenberg. Previously, I would have to navigate over to the general settings interface, but now I can go ahead and select a new logo while I'm editing that block. So this is kind of, just bringing more functionality into the block editor itself, so you don't need to be navigating all over the place. And there is two more things we're going to cover. So one of these is a helpful tool that is a little bit finicky, but I hope it's going to work for me. I'm going to go ahead and add an image into my post. And so something that's pretty common that we probably all do sometimes is you find an image, you insert from the URL, you add it in, and then you go to publish your post. But hey, I've never actually uploaded this image to WordPress. So one, this is a little bit rude. It's called hot linking. And it means that I'm taking some other site's bandwidth for using their image, which isn't great. But it also means that, hey, they could change that image on me. I thought I was displaying this cool picture of Times Square, but then maybe it goes to something else they didn't have pictured. WordPress is now going to detect this for you when you go ahead and publish your post. And it's to say, hey, we've found some external media. You can hit upload all. And automatically in the background, WordPress went ahead and uploaded this image to my media library. So now when I go ahead and hit publish, this is an actual URL on my site. We can go ahead and see that if we inspect that, hey, this is actually on my Nexus site. It isn't on Flickr's site, which is where I stole this image from. It's gone ahead and done that for me. And so we can see now in our media library that that image has been automatically uploaded. We actually have two of them when I was testing the demo earlier. The last thing that I want to touch on is theme previews. So a really cool feature that the customizer had was that you were able to take a theme, not have it actually affect your end user site, but see it as if it were active on your site. So kind of just for you, a special preview mode. This is now a feature that we have back in the full site editor. So I'm going to go ahead and click live preview on 2020. And so we can see now that WordPress has loaded up 2020 or 2022, excuse me. And I can go ahead and kind of like see, hey, this is the theme. These are some of the different options that it allows me. These are some customization points I can do. And I can go ahead and take a look at all of this. But if I go on ahead over to my site, I can see that it's still using the same old 2023 that I was using before. So I think this is a really kind of cool feature that lets you kind of explore different themes, with different styles. Maybe the days of switching themes so often are a little bit behind us. But we now can preview themes as if they were installed just for us like we could before. So it's nice to still see that little bit of feature parity. But yeah, am I going to say this now? I like 2023, so I'll just go ahead and get rid of those changes. But yeah, those are a kind of snapshot of some of the updates, excuse me, in WordPress 6.3. Like you mentioned, WordPress 6.3 is slated for release August 8th, I believe. This is release candidate 1. So now is a great time to test out the new version of WordPress. If you head on over to the plugins directory, you can search for beta testing. And when you install the beta testing plugin, you'll get a new tool in your tools menu called beta testing. They'll let you select the WordPress version that you want to test. And you will probably want to navigate over to release candidates only. And you can get started testing WordPress 6.3. I would make sure to always test on a staging site. Don't test on your actual site. It is a fairly stable update, but it's still nonetheless a not completely tested version of WordPress. But now is a great opportunity to go ahead and do that. So yeah, that is the main things I wanted to cover. If y'all have questions about WordPress 6.3, Gutenberg, WordPress, anything, plugin questions, we can stick around for a little bit and try to answer some of those questions. But yeah, I'll go ahead and touch on theme previews again. But basically, we now get access to the theme preview functionality from the customizer in the block editor. Oops, I went ahead and activated that. That's not what I meant to do. But I can hit live preview on a full site editor theme, and I'm now previewing 2022 inside the full site editor without needing to switch to that actual theme. My front end is unaffected. There's also another question, yeah, Bud, on rollback. So rollback is automatic. So this isn't a rollback feature that says, hey, I want to roll back to the previous version of WooCommerce because maybe I didn't realize all the ramifications. This is more of a protection measure so that if your site fails after an update, that it'll roll back for you automatically, but it's not something that you can take action on specifically. Yes, I will be at WordCamp US. So yeah, anyone who is in the area, WordCamp US is going to be in National Harbor this year, August, I think like 22nd, 23rd, something around there. So there's going to be days of talks, a contributor day. It's going to be great. I would highly recommend checking it out if you are anywhere near there. You can find details about it at us.wordcamp.org, 24th through the 26th. But yeah, the WordCamps are a great event. If you've never been to one, I'd recommend it, particularly if you're in the neighborhood. Nicole, I have a Gutenberg Genesis theme, and I'm thinking of switching it to Cadence. Do you have any thoughts or insight on Cadence? Yes, disclosure, I work for Stellar WP. Stellar WP, Cadence is one of our brands. So I'm very much a fan of Cadence. I get to work with Ben and his team over at Stellar WP most every day. So I think Cadence is a great option. So yes, I think it's great, but I'm a little bit biased, I suppose. But yes, I think it's a good product. He is a really smart guy, has built a smart team about thinking through block editor features, places where you can do more advanced things. So I think it's a really good choice. But yeah, there are a lot of choices out there. But I am a fan of Cadence. No problem, Nicole. And yeah, there is a Facebook group as well, which can be a place to check out if you have specific questions about Cadence as well. Will the WordPress New York City help desk be coming back? I would love to bring the help desk back. Right now, I believe we don't have a space for it. In the last couple that we did, unfortunately, we didn't get the greatest turnout. And so it's a lot to kind of organize and set up if only a few people show up. If this is something that you would be interested in, it'd be great to leave a comment on the Meetup group and say, hey, is this going to come back? It lets us know that, hey, this is something that people are interested in. I would really much love to have the help desk meetups come back. It's just a little bit tricky with the space. And if we don't have a lot of people show up, it's hard to justify to a sponsor that, hey, will you pay the $300-400 for us to rent a space in New York City? We'll get your brand out to 3 people, but yes, if that is something that you'd be interested in, throw it in chat, throw it in our Meetup page. It's a great thing for us to keep track of as well. I wish there was an easy way to duplicate a page. So Yoast SEO adopted a duplicate page plugin, and it sets up a lot of kind of things that you want to do to make sure that your SEO doesn't get ruined. So that's kind of like the plugin that I would recommend for duplicating a page. I think it's just built into, at this point, Yoast SEO, but it might still also be a separate plugin. Let's go ahead and see if we can find out. Yoast duplicate page. Yoast duplicate post. So yeah, this is the one that I would recommend. Yeah, Suzanne, it looks like it's in the free version. I'm guessing that they probably also integrated this into the main plugin itself, but it looks like it's also a standalone option. So if we install this and we'll go ahead and activate it, we'll dismiss that notice. Go rid of posts, and yeah, we get these 2 different options. You can clone it, or you get kind of like a rewrite option. And I think they have different SEO implications. Yeah, if I remember correctly. John saying that he also uses this separate plugin that works great. Awesome. Yeah, the Yoast folks build a lot of awesome plugins. They're definitely some ones that I would check out first. Any other questions? WordPress, plugins, security, web stuff? You can stick around for a few more minutes. Yeah, I can go ahead and link you to that meetup page. I'm glad it was helpful, everyone. I'll throw that in the chat. So this video, if the recording went perfectly, which I hope it did, Steve will be posting it up as well to our YouTube channel. We have a link to that somewhere. WNYC.org. I don't know, it's here somewhere. YouTube it. But yeah, the video for this will also be going online so you can review anything that we've talked about. Thanks, Amy. I'm glad you found it helpful. Thanks, Suzanne. Is the spacer block accessible? Yeah, so it's adding like some empty content, but it's not content that is necessary for a screen reader user to see. Um, Basically, like it's not something that's saying, hey, when we use an image, we want to have alt text so that we can describe what an image looks like to someone who isn't able to see it. But for the spacer, it's just adding in some empty content. And WordPress uses the ARIA hidden attribute. So it'll not only mean that there's no content there for the screen reader to read for the user, but it also means that the screen reader will just skip on over it because it's saying, hey, this is supposed to be hidden to screen readers. So yeah, I would say it's accessible. How many RCs typically before the final release in WordPress? 3 generally, I would say. Yeah, exactly. It's ARIA hidden. Amy, exactly. Okay, we'll do a final pass for questions. Oh, under read more for the YouTube channel. Thank you. I'm probably just having presentation blindness right now. Is there a plugin to find unused images? Not that I know of, but that could be a pretty cool feature. Um, I wonder, does anyone have a plugin that they use for detecting unused images that they want to share? I'm not familiar with one. Is the footnotes block a dynamic block? Let's find out. I think it's partially dynamic and like partially managed. We can take a look at what's actually in the database, and that'll tell us for sure. But you can see there, like it is being, when it's running, it's checking the actual content that I've written to be able to properly move things around. Here's my new post. This is one that was for. So let's go ahead and edit this guy. And we'll open up the code editor. If you don't know about this, under the 3 dots menu, we have a visual editor, which is what we're all used to, but we also have this code editor, which shows the actual raw block content. So it looks like the footnotes block is a dynamic block. So we're not actually saving the footnotes themselves to the database. I think it was WordPress 6.2, and it's also been involved in WordPress 6.3. There's a new PHP class for parsing text and HTML. So my guess is that that's what it's using underneath the hood. But yeah, it looks like it is fully a dynamic block. We're not actually saving any markup to the database. But yeah, it's keeping track of the changes that I make. Yeah, we should also take a look at see what this looks like in the content here. Yeah, so it is using, I guess it's a combination of the two, is that the actual footnote citations are stored in the HTML as like using that annotations API. Some great answers for finding unused images. Awesome. Yeah, it sounds like media hygiene. Yeah, a couple of other options for that. That's great to hear. And media cleaner from Lynn. Awesome. Very cool. Last call on questions. Media Cleaner has problems with background images. Interesting. Yeah, I could see that being a problem. Yeah, so like when you insert images into pages, let's see if we can find a good example of this. Hmm. Oh, that's from WordPress.org. Yeah, here we go. So when you add an image that's in your media library, we track like the ID, and it's available here to kind of be statically analyzed. But if it's just the URL that's present as like a background image in CSS or maybe in the cover block or things like that, I could see that maybe being more tricky to detect. So yeah, that would make sense. Interesting. Activate and deactivate is needed. Yeah, that seems like a good idea. No problem, Mark. Interesting. Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, that if generate blocks is not providing a way to actually see the ID of the image, it's probably not able to pick it up. And yeah, there wouldn't really be a place in CSS. I guess they'd probably have to make some kind of special integration between the two of them. But generate blocks is very popular. Um, I don't know whose side would be the one to make the changes to make it functional for the other one, but it seems like it would be a good fit to figure out a solution there. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you all for joining me this evening as we chat about WordPress 6.3. Again, my name is Timothy Jacobs. You can find more about me at timothyyjacobs.com. You can also, again, find out more information about our meetup at wpnyc.org over on our meetup page. And again, Steve will be posting this video up onto YouTube in the next couple of days. So if you ever want to rewind, check another section out, you'll be able to go ahead and do that. But thank you all for joining me. Have a great rest of your evening. Take care, y'all.